Hey, what is up guys? It's your boy Speed here, and today we're going to be going over one hero for each role in 7.32e. Now I will say, unfortunately, one of the roles has not changed at all since last patch. What can you do? I don't make the rules. I didn't decide that it's going to be 7.32e instead of 7.33. It is what it is. What can you do? But for the other roles, the heroes are a little bit different. My suggestions are going to be slightly different than what they would have been in the past. And so yeah, if you're looking for one hero for each role, something to try out in solo queue, the hero that is going to be best in terms of win rate, then yeah, this video is for you. Let's start with the safe lane. Also, I want to tell you guys that if you've been struggling with solo queue and you're looking to get to the next rank, I'm going to be able to help you. Like literally with the gameleap website, I'm going to give you guys guides that are going to make it unbelievably clear on what you need to do. So if you've been stuck in the solo queue grind, you don't know what to do, and you want to become absolutely broken, but like actually you want to become much better at Dota, and you want to take it more seriously, the gameleap website is going to help you do that. So click the link down below. I'm going to help you get to the next rank, and I'll see you there. All right, getting into the position 1 role, we have Clinks. Because of the fact that I've recently made a top 5 carry list, I'm not going to spend too much time on Clinks because you guys can either watch that video or a lot of you guys have already watched that video. But I think Clinks has been good for a while. I actually recently even coached one of my students on Clinks, and I can kind of see why this hero is good. It can get active in fights once it hits honestly level 6, but particularly when it hits level 12, it's one of the most dominant early game carries. On top of that, it's honestly a lane dominator when people lack synergy. I've been saying this in a lot of my videos as of late, but I kind of just believe in the idea that in the laning stage for the average pub, people don't pressure very hard. There's lack of synergy, and so heroes that just kind of put consistent pressure are quite dominant in the laning stage. Every time I've coached a Clinks replay in the last 3 to 4 months, the hero will dominate the first 3 to 4 levels. And the reason why is when you auto attack with searing arrows, you don't pull creep aggro. So you can put in a lot of aggression, you can really harass out your opponent and get off to a good start. And then when you hit level 6, even if you don't rotate out of your lane, which typically you have to if you're at a high level because the hero is pretty gankable, right? It doesn't have much of a defensive spell. I mean, invisibility is not invincibility. But in low MMR, I'm gonna keep it real. Invisibility often is invincibility. Not always. All right, I know a lot of people are saying, I'm 3k speed and I always buy dust. Every time I'm playing against Clinks and I gank them, I always have dust. It's like, all right, I know you're the greatest player of all time and you're held back by your team, but I'm talking about in general, all right? I understand you're the exception. Either way, Clinks scales well. I think the Gleipnir build is good. And then they just recently buffed the hero. They gave him the ability to spawn a singular skeleton when he comes out of Skeleton Walk. It's not some groundbreaking change, but I think the hero was already a 53-54% win rate. Now it just gives him this little bit of a buff, a 1%, 2% increased change. And yeah, I just think compared to the other carries who have been nerfed, Naga nerfed, NP nerfed, Lina nerfed, Slark nerfed, right? All these heroes, all these top meta heroes being nerfed, you have Clinks shifting to the meta. I even think at the highest level, people will consider the hero, but it tends to be better in your average pub. So yeah, let's move on to the mid lane. All right, getting into the mid lane, we have Necrophos. So Necrophos only received 1 buff last patch, but it's actually a decent sized buff. So the ability you typically max out on Necro is Death Pulse. That's the nuke that heals and does AoE damage. What they changed was the mana cost was decreased from 100, 130, 160 to 190 to 100, 120, 140, 160. So at every level besides level 1, it's a little bit better. At level 2, it's 10 mana less, 3, 20, and 4, 30. It might not seem like a big deal, but if you've ever played Necro, this hero will have mana problems. It just will, which seems weird because like Heartstopper gives you mana regen. But the reality is this ability is such a low cooldown and such a high mana cost, where often if you were using it as much as you would probably want to, well, you would run out of mana. So having a mana cost decrease is just going to help you get off that extra death pulse, right? That death pulse that's going to keep you alive, get you to your item faster, get a kill, whatever it is, right? It just matters. I don't think it's groundbreaking. As I said, this patch, I wish I could say more, but either way, it's a nice size change. And the reason why I think Necro is particularly good as a mid is I don't love him as an offlaner. And the reason why I typically don't love this hero as an offlaner is I think situationally, very strong in the offlane. Don't get me wrong. Situationally, very strong in the offlane. It can dominate its lane. It can be a real nuisance to the enemy. It can just kind of be a bully, sit in the area and be obnoxious, right? And it can be like, okay, Necro's a very good hero. But the problem is it's slow, bad armor, very kickable out of lane in the early levels. So if that isn't going to happen, which sometimes it doesn't, you can get away with an offlane Necro. But mid Necro, it has almost no bad matchups. I swear, it just goes very aggressive, goes very hard. It can even, I've seen it beat Death Prophet in the mid lane, which is like pretty crazy, right? It's just one of those heroes that is a real nuisance. And I will admit, the higher you go, I think the Necro mid becomes worse because the ability to play tempo, move around is more important. And on top of that, the way to kill Necro is synergy. If you are unsynergistic and you go on him, even if it's like, let's say one person goes on him and then it takes 2 seconds for the next person and then 4 seconds for the next person, that gap is going to allow him to get off Ghost Shroud, his wand, his hood, his Death Pulse, his ult, and it's just like all of a sudden this hero becomes a menace. And I really do believe that's why Necro tends to win these pubs. He just does a lot of damage by existing, and the lack of synergy on kill attempts tends to mean that this hero is going to pop off in the early game teamfights. And so yeah, Necro is definitely a mid lane hero I would suggest. Getting into the third hero on the list, the off-laner, we have Axe, one of the highest win rate heroes on Dota buff at the current time, and one of the heroes that received the most major buffs. If you don't know what the buffs were, he got 5 movement speed, which is always a bigger deal than people understand. Also considering he gets percentage-based movement speed with his Battle Hunger. It's only 5, so I'm not going to go too crazy on that, but it's good, right? And then counter helix, the radius was increased from 275 to 300. So a nice little change to counter helix, making it easier to, clip people with the edge of the counter helix, right? It's definitely nice. And on top of that, Axe was already good. It was a hero that has a very reliable laning stage. I definitely think Axe is quite good. And if you understand how to play this hero, typically what you do is you take Battle Hunger at level 1, and it's a really, really strong harass spell. Like, I don't think people understand how good Battle Hunger is at level 1. It is a 20-second cooldown, but it's a 12-second duration, so optimally you use it when they can't get rid of it. The downside is if they get a last hit or deny when they're affected by Battle Hunger, it goes away. So you do have to use it when the creep wave is full HP, right? You almost always want to use it just right away as the wave meets, and then try to prevent them from getting any sort of deny or last hit by pressuring them. But essentially what this ability does is 10 damage per second, but then an armor multiplier of 1. So let's say you have 5 armor because you bought a ring of protection, it does 15 damage per second for 12 seconds. It also slows them and gives you that movement speed. And so basically this ability for only 50 mana, which is nothing, does a ton of damage, gives you movement speed, and so it's just a good laning spell. And then of course counter helix, it's pure damage, you can spin a lot, get aggressive, and then yeah, really, the funny thing is, Axe has like, this hero's win rate isn't even necessarily as high as I think it should be, right? Because people don't flash farm enough. Like the best way to play Axe, in my opinion, is you can get your Vanguard. You should typically get a 5 to 6 minute Vanguard, can get it earlier if you get a kill, right? But let's say you get a 5 to 6 minute Vanguard, you can pressure the safe laner and you can like run at them and just be a nuisance with the Vanguard because the tower does limited damage to you when you have Vanguard, or you can just like giga free farm, right? Like let's say you're playing against Ursa or Monkey King, a hero that even with Vanguard, it's like pretty hard to pressure them. What you do is you just flash farm. You drag the wave from in between the tier 1 and tier 2 tower. From minute 530 on, you can take it from, even the tier 2 to all the nearby camps, and like with 0 resources and almost no chance of dying to ganks because you're like extremely tanky and Battle Hunger makes you run away really effectively, you just flash farm like a madman. So this hero is reliable. It has a lot of buffs. I think its shard is extremely good in certain matchups. If you don't know what the shard is, it increases the chance to spin by 10%, which is a lot. And then every time you spin on someone, they do 15% less attack damage reduction, which does not affect Blade Mail though. So Blade Mail will still do the maximum amount of damage. On that note as well, Vanguard got buffed a few patches ago and Blade Mail got buffed a few patches ago, the main 2 items for Axe. So I really think everything has kind of just come together for this hero. Getting into the position 4 role, literally, I cannot talk about, every single melee 4 has a bad win rate. It's just insane. They all have like bad win rates. It's like, I want to talk about like, oh, you should try like Nyx Assassin or Tiny, and like these heroes' win rates aren't like completely abysmal. Like I think Nyx Assassin is actually the highest, if I'm not mistaken, out of like most of them. I think it's Clock or Nyx. Out of all like the melee 4s are decent in win rate, but they're still not great, right? There's no like standout 4s. It just doesn't exist. It's pretty funny. Most of the highest win rate heroes in Dota right now are either offlaners, position 5s, or safe laners. Like, for some reason, the mid lane and the position 4 role just don't seem to have standout heroes. And frankly, I kind of agree. When it comes to drafting, I just think it's more about having like good counter picks in the side lanes. And I think that, I mean, not to say that you can't be a dominant 4 player, dominant mid player. That's just like the furthest thing from the truth. I don't know, just when it comes to picks, it's a little bit harder to have like a giga dominant hero, at least on average, right? As I said, Dota's a beautiful game, guys. You can get to a 60-70% win rate on any hero. Like I always like to say that at some point in these videos, you can win on any hero. I'm just saying the easier heroes to win is typically what I'm going to be recommending in these videos. But when it comes to the 4 role, we have Treant and Silencer. I couldn't really pick one because both of them got nerfed, but they're still the best position 4s, so I'm not going to say anything. They're the exact same hero. Watch any old guide on the hero, you're going to learn everything you need to know. They are practically the same, just with number nerfs. And then at position 5, we have Jakiro, which is actually one of the most, like, I thought this hero was pretty good. I actually think Jakiro is an underrated hero. I think this hero, even at a high level, is underrated. I think people think it's too clunky or something, but I really think the max Q build on Jakiro is like crazy good early on. Like, it does so much. It actually does so much. And now they buffed Ice Path very significantly. When you throw this thing out at max level, it lasts on the ground for an extra full second. And then a few patches ago, they made it where if you walk into the stun, you get stunned for the full duration. Back in the day, let's say the ice path was on the ground for about, let's say it was on the ground for about 2 seconds, right? And it would last up to 3.5. It was on the ground for 2 seconds. If that was the case, when you walked into it, you would only get stunned for like 0.5 or 0.7 seconds. It was pathetic. They got rid of that, and now it lasts on the ground for 4.5 seconds. So it's like this fissure, this like really obnoxious fissure. And then Macro Pyre also immediately does damage now, canceling blinks and just simply doing more damage, right? That extra 0.5 seconds of damage, it might not seem like a lot, but that's 55 damage, guys. 55, I mean, you're getting 55 damage. Unless I don't understand the numbers, but considering it says now applies its damage immediately upon casting rather than 0.5 seconds after, that's an extra 55 damage. In the early game, heroes have 1,200 health. Like, that's gonna be the difference between them dying or not. You know what I mean? Like, these are just important buffs to the heroes. And yeah, so this Ice Path buff, good. Macro Pyre, like both of the buffs are very substantial and notable buffs, and this hero was already damn good. In my opinion, I don't think it's easy to play, but it's like kind of straightforward. You just cast your spells from the back. It does a lot of damage in the early game, so it's very dominant in these early clashes that you see in pubs all the time. When both teams group up with 4 heroes, it just does a lot. To be fair, I think the biggest weakness of this hero is something that doesn't happen very much, which is the split push game. Even though it's good at clearing waves, it's not good at like picking people off. Ice Path is just, it is clunky for that, and the hero is naturally slow. So yeah, it has a problem with certain playstyles, but I think those playstyles are just not that prevalent at the current time. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you disagree with any of my picks, or you have heroes you want to talk about, heroes you've been dominating with, I'd love to hear what you guys have been like crushing with in your pubs. Maybe I'll make a video on what you guys have to say. But yeah, I want to hear in the comment section down below what you guys have been dominating with. Maybe it's Huskar, that hero got a big buff. Jug got some changes. I don't think Jug... No, I think Jug almost got nerfed, right? Like, kind of weird. This hero got like buff nerfed. It was really bizarre. Apparently Kunkka's win rate is also not that bad in pubs, which is so weird because I think this hero sucks. But either way, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one, and I'm out. Peace. And that's all, but remember, before you leave, come on, before you tune out, subscribe to the gameleap website where we are going to help you get to the next rank. If you're stuck, click the link down below, and I'm out. Peace.